So welcome to our mass spectral interpretation tools and tips and tools for GC-IMS and high-res MS data. I'm Ed Sisco. I'll be one of your moderators today. Rune Morthy will be my co-moderator and co-pilot throughout this entire presentation. We have a number of panelists that'll be joining us today. We'll give a little bios about them in just a little bit. But Ed Arisman, James Little, Gary Mallett, and David Sparkman have all graciously agreed to come here and teach everybody, including myself, some of the tools and tricks to identification and interpretation of mass spectral data, especially for those that are unknown compounds. All right, so real quick overview of how the schedule will run today. Arun and I will give I'll give a very brief introduction, kind of set the stage for what the workshop, what we intend to get out of the workshop. And then Rune will provide some brief overview and introductions to the different tools and libraries that NIST has available to the community. After that, what we have is the four panelists, Ed Arisman, Gary Mallett, James Little, and David Sparkman. And we've purposely kept this workshop a little informal, and hopefully that'll lead it to being lively. We've kind of given them a whole set of possible unknowns or other example spectra to play with. And the goal is that in real time, they're going to walk through kind of how they might go about interpreting either GCMS data, high-res mass spec data, and arrive at things like identification of unknown spectra, how to use retention indices or retention time, things like that. So feel free at any point to ask questions throughout the entire workshop. Please use the chat function in the BlueJeans app to ask questions. And then basically what we'll have is 45 minutes for each panelist. Hopefully 35 minutes of that will be demonstrations of how to use different tools, some of the tricks that go into interpreting mass spectral data. And then we'll have some time for question and answers after each speaker. And then we'll also have time at the end of the day to continue any discussions or get more in depth into any topics that might be of interest to the community. So real quick overview of kind of where we are and what kind of made us go about doing this workshop. As most of you are aware, the focus of this workshop will be predominantly on C's drug analysis, but this is certainly applicable to any type of mass spectral interpretation. And so this is kind of a brief overview of how we see C's drug analysis being done. Obviously, you're going to obtain a case sample. You're going to do some sort of screening tests with that. That might be color test, that might be GCMS, GCFID. But ultimately, most labs will wind up running the sample on GCMS, so they'll dissolve it in some solvent, maybe do a derivatization step if necessary, run on GCMS, obtain a chromatogram. From that, we will extract the mass spectrum of an unknown compound, and then we will do some sort of library searching of that compound to make a preliminary identification through interpreting the mass spec and looking at library spectra. From there, we might want to purchase a reference material or we'll have a reference material on hand. Most labs will then run that, or will have had run that sample, that reference material, using the exact same method, obtain the retention time and the reference mass spectra to compare it to, and then we can do a comparison from the case sample to the reference spectra to confirm the identity of the compound. So with that whole overview, where we really want to focus on today is step number 4, interpreting mass spectra, proposing structures or classifications of compounds. We realize that this is a big challenge in C's drug analysis now, especially with all the new novel psychoactive substances and emerging drugs that are coming across the benches of all the laboratories across the country, where the whole additional process steps 5 and 6 may not really be useful because there may not be a standard available. So if you're in a laboratory, you run a sample, you have no idea what that compound is, it doesn't match anything in your library, you go to a place like Cayman, you look through the standards they have available, there's nothing there that really matches what you think it is. How do we go about making this identification of what this compound might be? And so now I'm going to throw it over to Arun, who will give you a little overview on what can we do and what are some of the overviews of the tools and libraries